No. Ashhadu anna la ilaha illa Allah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. It is the religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for us. And now it is our obligation, brothers and sisters, to share this message with others. The Islamic Diversity Center has been spreading this beautiful message of Islam through our educational workshops, through our exhibition and live events, and most importantly, we are there supporting those that accept Islam, supporting them through education, through social events, and even those that are in financial difficulty. Brothers and sisters, imagine you make a donation to support this work, and alhamdulillah, somebody accepts Islam. You will be getting reward for every single thing that they do, every salah that they pray, every dua that they make, every knowledge that they gain and that they pass on to their future generation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put those good deeds on your scales on the Day of Judgment. Subhanallah, this is an amazing opportunity. So brothers and sisters, I encourage you all to make a donation as much as you can so we can continue doing this amazing work. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to How to Raise a Better Mum with me, Abdullah. And what I would usually say now is my guest, Mariam, but she's running a little bit late today. Allah make it easy for her, but she is on her way, she's told us. So don't worry about it, Mariam, if you're listening. I do, however, have another guest on today, a dear sister of mine, Taiba. But she is in the studio today, and technology has not been the hasn't been our best friend. So we're going to see if she can hear us. Taiba, assalamu alaikum. Can you hear us?
Walaikum salam. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you beautifully. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
Oh, walaikum salam. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, my love. Jazakallah khair for doing this. I've been trying to get Taiba on the show for a while, and those that have been listening know that Mariam's been asking me, are you doing the mental health episode yet? And unfortunately, she works Mondays, but this weekend I realised it's bank holiday and I quickly took the opportunity to ask. So Jazakallah khair, Allah reward you for your time. It's so nice to hear you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Alhamdulillah.
No problem at all. So as I said, this is the How to Raise a Better Mum. You can listen to us on IDC platforms, that's Facebook and YouTube. And our sponsor is One Nation Childcare. So yes, the show. So we've discussed a few things on the show, how to maintain our spiritual health and our physical health, but we're going to do a good one today, inshallah. We're going to talk about how to maintain our mental health after having a newborn. So Taiba, do you want to tell me a little bit about what you do and your area of work?
Yeah, so I work in sort of the mental health field. So I am a tutor and I do courses for people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, those sort of things. So we look at confidence building, emotional resilience, talk a lot about mindfulness as well. So that's my sort of background, my expertise, as you'd like to say.
Oh, perfect. That's and I knew this, but I just wanted to share with the group, and this is exactly why I wanted to do on. And you have two beautiful Allahumma barak children as well. How old are they?
So the little one is 2 and the old one's 5, mashallah.
Mashallah, and they are just, Allah give them goodness. I mean, and make them the coolness of your eyes. They are absolutely gorgeous. Alhamdulillah. So yes. So I was, I think what we'll do is, Taiba, you can share your expertise, but if you don't mind, and you don't have to, you can share a bit of personal experience as well, if that's okay with you. But the thing for me that comes to mind when you think of mental health after having a baby is postnatal depression. That's the main thing that people talk about, the thing that you read about, what they warn you about when you're pregnant. But I didn't realize actually that it kind of encompasses quite a lot. There's quite a lot under that umbrella. So I think starting with that, if you want to go into a little bit about, or as much as you want, on postnatal depression and a bit of a breakdown on it, because it's not just depression, is it? It's more than that.
No, yeah, you're right. There's so many elements to it. So with postnatal depression, there's different types of sort of symptoms that you might feel, or different types of disorders that come along with that. When we're talking about postnatal depression, it can include so many other things, like for example, if you're experiencing intrusive thoughts with that, or if you're struggling with social anxiety, you might struggle with a lot of other things, really, like even general anxiety. So basically, when we're looking at postnatal, those sort of anxieties and the depression that we might feel, it's really good to sort of break it down first to get an idea of what it is, that how can we support ourselves, if that makes sense.
That's perfect. That makes complete sense, and a beautiful breakdown of what I was thinking, because it is more than that. I hope Mariam can, inshallah, make it, because I know she's got a lot to share. But I didn't realize it like you said, encompassed so many different symptoms. I myself, Abdullah is now 10 and a half months old, alhamdulillah. And even though you can never be prepared for these things, but you read up on it and you try to mentally prepare, it's so difficult, because it's not a rational thing. Obviously, it's a chemical thing, and all your hormones are going everywhere. So it's so difficult to just manage, really. But also, actually, as a side point, I didn't give Theba the best of briefing. I just briefed her very quickly. But one thing I was thinking about earlier today is also the taboo within our community with mental health. So that's one thing that I'm really happy that we're able to discuss this topic, because often within the Muslim community, discussion of mental health is still quite a taboo. Would you say that's the same? Would you say that's correct, Theba?
Oh, definitely. I think we've come a long way, but there's a long way to go, inshallah.
That's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah, so maybe we'll touch upon that a little bit later as well. But so you mentioned social anxiety, intrusive thoughts. Do you want to go into them a little bit further?
Yeah, for those who might not be aware what intrusive thoughts are, the thoughts that lead, so they're basically really strong thoughts we might have that might cause death, or they might cause some sort of harm to someone else or to yourself. It's really quite, again, trigger warning with this. Sorry, I do apologise for anybody who's listening and struggling with this. But yeah, so with those thoughts, it might be, I'll give a bit of examples, but for those who struggle with this, with intrusive thoughts, please just tune out. But if so basically the sort of thoughts that you might have is that actually I'm going to drop the baby, or it might be things like actually if I just do this, what might happen? And like it might have a lighter in your hand, like those sort of things. I won't go into too much detail just in case. But it's those strong thoughts, and when we because our hormones are changing, when we've just had a baby, we might be struggling. Those thoughts can come full blown. And to be honest, many mothers I've spoken to who have similar thoughts, but they thought they were going crazy for having them. And especially what you said, Mariam, about when you are in sort of that culture, could be any type of culture really, but even with like in Islam, for example, about again, trigger warning about suicide or self-harm, when you're getting those thoughts as well, like suicidal thoughts, again, it's very, very normal to have those thoughts when you're struggling. But of course, it's about what we do with those thoughts going forward. But it is really natural to have them. And a lot of mothers would agree that they have similar thoughts, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. Jazakallah khair for that. And thank you so much for the trigger warnings. That's, really, really helpful. And yeah, I completely, that you touched upon something like women think that, or mothers think that they're alone. And I definitely feel that. I feel like motherhood is one of the most isolating things. It sounds odd because, if you have your family around you and your partner and you have another being with you, but it is so isolating. And especially if you're going through something like this, and struggling with your mental health, it's even more isolating. I know one thing that helped me massively was when I was struggling, and as I said in previous shows, as with many of us, I've moved to a different town, so I'm not with, close to my family or my community. And Mariam Khan has entered the studio. Assalamu alaikum, my love. You okay? Yes. I'll let you take a breather. I'll finish a sentence and then I'll catch you up. But yes, what was I saying? Isolating. Yes. And I don't live in the same town. But the one thing that helped me, and I don't know if I've mentioned this in the previous show, was the family hub. There's family hubs and different show star centres dotted around all over the place. And I found one, alhamdulillah, very, very close by. And they did various training programs, like, child safety, like child psychology, breastfeeding groups. They do play groups. And I remember the first time I went, I called the centre and asked and just inquired, and they're like, yeah, it's fine, come along. And I thought the receptionist was just going to take me straight to the class or just show me around, but she literally took me. They had a cafe in ours, which is recently gone, which is really sad, but like a community cafe. But she literally sat with me for like 2 hours and just chatted, and it was just so nice. And then she told me about, and then from that she directed me to various groups. And then sitting with a lot of other new mothers, you realize you're not alone. You realize that what you're feeling is actually quite common. And it's just such a relief. It is, because like you said, Taiba, like you do feel like you're going absolutely mad, which obviously makes it feel worse. So yeah, so Mariam, assalamu alaikum, my love, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I've actually been listening since the show started in the car.
Mashallah. Okay, so not much to catch you up on. So
no, and assalamu alaikum, Sister Taiba, if you can hear or see me.
Assalamu alaikum, I can see you.
We missed you. We had an iftar this week, and Mariam was unfortunately not able to make it, so we missed you this week.
Jazakallah khair.
Lovely to see you. So yes, my love.
Do you know what Sister Taiba was saying? She mentioned some key points at the beginning about like emotional resilience and mental health being taboo.
Yes.
So those are the two things that I would like to touch upon later on.
Yeah, go for it.
Because sorry, are you done with making the point?
Yeah. I'm
okay.
We're gonna go with the flow on this one.
Okay.
So I know we've all got a lot to say on this, and usually I kind of make a bit of a plan, but I know this is Taiba's field, and I know Mariam, you were looking forward to this episode.
Yeah.
So inshallah, you go for it.
So Sister Taiba, do you know when you talk about emotional resilience, can you like expand upon more what that means for the viewers and the listeners?
Of course, yes, definitely. So with our emotions, I honestly can go on about this for hours, but basically I'll try and break it down. So with our emotions, what happens is we've got these natural emotions, but what happens is when we are struggling with our mental health, they can feel really, really extreme. So with the emotional resilience that I teach, what it's about is basically about understanding what our emotions, the purpose, understanding they're there for a reason, and then understanding how to like manage them and get them to a level where it's more appropriate, if that makes sense. So it's not about getting rid of them, but just about managing them.
That's interesting, because do you know, like, and Mariam, you might have been reading about this in the past, like when you were expecting Abdullah. Have you heard of the term like emotional regulation and co-regulation?
Yes.
So I would say like that's vital, particularly as a new mum, is obviously not just learning how to, like Sister Taiba said, like managing your emotions. And because I think you were saying when I was listening to the first bit of when you started talking, do you know, like, if someone already has anxiety or social anxiety or like suffers from clinical depression anyways, and then they get PND on top of it, is what you were saying before, those feelings are heightened, so they become even more prominent with postnatal depression. Because, so, you know, some people are quite good at masking their anxieties. They're quite good at, have you had to fake it till you make it confidence?
Yeah, and
which can work psychologically. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, I was agreeing with you.
Yes. So I would say, like, maybe with PND, just from personal experience, this is all anecdotal from my perspective, those feelings can feel heightened. And I know my sister's not listening, but I don't think she's listening to this right now. She'll probably be working. But I know that with one of my sisters who also gave birth around the same time I did, she was a different version of who she normally is. Do you know my sister, Donna Zaid, who lives in Yorkshire, that one? So you've met her, and she's quite like tough, emotionally.
Yeah,
She doesn't really share her feelings. She can be very sociable and very happy and like woo, like a bit like me, but like times 2.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. She's quite like
yes, and it's like sometimes it can feel like
centered in that sense.
Yeah, but then after she gave birth, I've never seen her like that before. And she was asking me for advice, and that put me in like whoa on the back foot because I was quite shocked.
Yeah,
because this was her second child, and she was asking me, her younger sister, for like. And because she started feeling a bit rubbish, and we all did because me and my other sister, that the one that lives down in Bedfordshire, all give birth at the same time. Allah Mubarak. So the PND really brought out a different version of that sister in particular, and I was so shocked. And I think, like you were saying before, it's your hormones going all over the place, and if you're breastfeeding, your progesterone levels are quite high as well, and then they kind of fluctuate, and then you've got a lot of women experience like things like hair loss, and they feel like people are quite critical if you don't bounce back in time. So all of these different factors from a society, from your family, from your friends, from just you being very self-critical of your own body and your mental health can really have such a huge detrimental impact. And so when you're feeling, sorry, but the point I was trying to make here was when you're feeling irregulated, the right term? Dysregulated?
Dysregulated. Maybe Taiba, is it an opposite to regulated?
Irregular.
Yeah, you could say, I guess you could say irregular, I guess, or dysregulated.
Feeling irregular or dysregular. You don't want that to pass on to your child. And then, do you know what?
That's a vicious circle, because then that gets worse, and then it makes you feel worse. And then
mum guilt. It compounds that mum guilt, doesn't it? And then you just feel like I'm not doing the right thing. And then you see things on social media and you're like, all these mums look amazing and they've just had a baby, but they're already back in the swing of things and they're like super mum.
And then some people mum shame, which we'll get into next week.
So I was just thinking that point you made about emotional resilience, and you guys are talking about intrusive thoughts. I was like, oh my God, that's me.
I
was just like, oh, that's so subhanAllah. Like,
shows that you're not alone.
Like that you hit the nail on the head there, I'm looking into the camera, but I don't know if you can actually see me.
I can. I am looking into your eyes.
So Taiba, did you, if you don't mind sharing some, like Maureen was saying, if you don't mind, did you have any personal experiences that you can share with the listeners and what you did to overcome after having your kids?
That's fine.
Sorry, Miriam, I didn't catch that.
Sorry, my lovely. I said, but if you don't feel like sharing that, that's completely fine as well.
I know, I'm more than comfortable, honestly. So to be honest, that example I gave of the lighter, that's actually a real life example. It's something I've experienced when I was, I had PND myself, postnatal depression. So it's those intrusive thoughts at the time, even though I was still working in the mental health field, I still felt quite alone, and I felt like, oh, actually, this is crazy. I'm getting these thoughts. So when you're in that position yourself, it feels so overwhelming. But what helped me is actually like positive affirmations. So reminding myself, positive affirmations are basically positive things we can say to ourselves, reminders of what we're doing right, because everything feels like it's going wrong when you're in that position. So I just kept reminding myself that actually you're doing well. These thoughts are natural, like they'll go themselves. It's not like you're acting on it. Don't feel guilty about it. Just letting those thoughts in. That's the important part, and it can be very difficult when you're struggling to let those thoughts in. But once you actually just accept that you're having those thoughts and let them go themselves, it's actually a lot easier. But it's easy for me to say that because you need to be in a certain mental state to do that. And it can be easy to just push those thoughts away and then they bounce back again. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
It is really good to just challenge them.
No, that's a really, really interesting point, because you wouldn't think that's the case. You would think it's the opposite. Well, okay, that's a generalization. I personally am a blocker. So for me, that wouldn't be the first thing that comes to mind, that let them in. For me, the first the first thing is like block them out. Mom's laughing because she knows. So she's like, just bottle them up. But another interesting point that you made was, and it was a bit of advice, and I think we'll sandwich our bits of information with bits of advice, because we usually leave it to the end and then we rush. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And it's really interesting that you said about positive affirmations, because that goes to show how different techniques help different people depending on their personality. Because see, my personality, I'm very extroverted and I'm very a people person. So for me, that, as I mentioned before, going to the family hub, going to these mothers groups was like literally I went from a 0 to like a good 6, 7 in the first group. And then, like you said, you said, Thayba, for you it was words, positive affirmations. So I think
is that when you see like people put sticky notes on the mirror to remind?
Yeah, or like she said, just telling herself, reminding
Yeah.
herself, writing it down, putting sticky notes
That's
on the
good,
mirror.
yeah.
And I must admit, during my experience, I'd have Dr. Abdullah, the only one there. But even to myself, like, it's fine. You've read up about this. You know that it's normal. It's okay to feel like this. Like acknowledge, like they said, acknowledge the emotion, but it will go eventually.
And sorry, have you noticed? Have you noticed that helps you? Like, do you get through that like slump or whatever?
I think that by itself wouldn't have helped me personally, although just reminding yourself is good, because I think me personally, I don't think there's one general rule for everybody. I think there's a tendency to spiral if you're not, because the mothers group were great, were amazing, but I wasn't going every day, all day. You need to do things in between those kind of meetings. And I think the positive affirmations for me were the things that kind of maintained my mental health in between those meetings, and maybe coming home to see my mom or my mum visiting or whatever. So positive affirmations definitely. But I agree with that. And then, like I said, for me, it was also the social experience, meeting other mums. But everybody that knows me knows that, like, anything I do, I like to do it in a social setting. So for me, that was the case. What about you? Was anything specific that helped you?
Do you know, for me, I don't know how to describe this as, but I always had to be forward thinking and think about the future, and know that whatever slump I might be in after having given birth, and whatever downer I'm in, there's also going to be an upside coming to it. And I know that in the future it's not always going to be as hard. And one of the things that I did feel guilty about, and I still do to this day, is wishing for this phase to speed up. So do you know, like the waiting for certain I can't wait for them to grow up a little bit older and a little bit more exciting.
That's
and
me now.
It's subhanAllah, yeah. But then now I'm like, I'm not gonna say jealous, but I'm like, oh, like when I see that you still got a baby and it's not a toddler yet. He's not toddler yet.
I'm the same. Sorry to interrupt. When I look back at babies now, I'm like, oh, I missed that phase.
Yes.
Grass is always greener, really.
I mean, the only mums and dads I know that don't miss the baby phase is their children who have had colic. But now, like, alhamdulillah, my daughter didn't have colic. And now I'm just thinking back, like, I wish I soaked it in a little bit better, a little bit more. I mean, Allah's the best of planners, and I'm so grateful that I've even got a daughter. So grateful, subhanallah. I mean, but yeah. So now, now that I'm going through I don't like the phrase. I hate the phrase "terrible twos."
Yeah,
but
I don't like that phrase either. I hate that.
It's
phrase.
like stigmatizing the child is like an expectation to be negative.
It's like when kids, and then again we'll come to this next week when we talk about relationships. But like when certain family members or previous like older generations are like, oh, he's being naughty. He's just acting. He's whinging. I did something called the Solihull course, but unfortunately, I only got to do one of the classes because of the sleep pattern changed. So I'll look into that and share more about that next week, because I've got a few resources to share for the last show, a few books and things. And it was touching upon things that I knew, but it was obviously doing it in a more like academic way, so it's giving all the theory and the information. And one of the things was, it was talking about how how people say, oh, they're just pretending to cry, the fake crying. And because a lot of them are very
like common, babies, toddlers,
babies, and they're talking about how like
crocodile tears,
and how inappropriate that is. And I won't go into it too much because obviously not the topic of the day, but we've gone off topic. But sorry, you were saying about terrible twos. That's something that really irks me when people say that. And I do with Abdullah as well. I do get, and I have told people like, and it builds character. No, it doesn't. It doesn't build character. So I now have got to a stage where I just tell people not to use that negative language around them. But sometimes
and it's hard when people don't listen, isn't it? Like, oh,
that's it.
To just reinforce the things that you don't want them to reinforce, and that can be very frustrating, especially when it's out of your control, and it might have it like in-laws and whatnot.
But anyway, sorry, terrible twos. We'll go back on.
So for example, when I think about forward thinking, that's one of the ways that I helped to get myself out of my like downers, is thinking about the upsides, thinking about the first, like her milestones, and the first time she smiled at me, and those things that Allah has allowed the mother to do, something that's unique for the mother to feel. Because obviously fathers have their roles to play as well, which is which is a given.
Yeah.
But there's something about the bond between a child and its mother, which is unmatched, it's unparalleled.
Unique.
And yeah, it's so unique that, you know, we're driven biologically to want to nurture, protect, and fight for our children in a way that's a little bit different to how fathers are engineered to do that.
That's it.
So now when I think about my daughter's hard phases and hard feelings and big feelings that she's dealing with now, like I said before, I think about in the future where I'm going to even miss this 2-year-old stage, because the way that helps me is give myself perspective is looking at my nieces and one nephew that I've got. I look at like how big my nieces have gotten, you know, from when they were babies and when they were crawling and when they were babbling and being cute little kids and running around like little monsters, and to now like being in secondary school. And it's so, subhanAllah, so weird, because in my head they're still little kids, they're still little babies, but they're not. And I'm just like, I'm scared, I'm worried and excited for the future of our children now. So this is what helps me, but also I don't think it might help a lot of people, because it's going to be quite morbid and depressing thinking about the future as well.
No,
I don't know. Like, I think different listeners might have different viewpoints. Sorry, Taiba, yes.
No, just with what you've said, I think that's absolutely amazing, and we do recommend that as well when we're providing the support about forward thinking and thinking positively, that actually like this phase will pass. It's actually a big form of because it's a form of mindfulness, really, because mindfulness is accepting how things are in the moment, being in the moment, and then like sort of preparing for the future as well, but not ruminating on the past, you know, a bit like how you said, I missed that phase. It's so natural to do that. Again, this is how our brains are wired, aren't they? We think about, you know, the grass is greener, as Mariam said. But it's a really big part. So Mariam, honestly, like, I totally agree with you there with what you said about the forward thinking. It's an amazing skill to have.
Yeah, there you go. See, it wasn't a random thing. It's another thing that you now know that you're not the only one that does that. Alhamdulillah. I never really thought about that. Like, Islamically, you know, Allah does tell us that, you know, everything is temporary, the good times and the bad times. So there is that element to it, but it's something that actually, I never did that actually. I'm thinking back, and I didn't really look back or forward, come to think of it.
You're just in the moment.
Which is very rare for me, actually. But I think I was just, but not in the good way though, but in a bad way, like kind of the moment swallowed me up.
But that's good though, because it's also, in a way, because it's also showing that you're living in the present. Because as Taiba said, some people can dwell on the past a lot, but if you're not doing that either, because do you know, like, so do you know, like, some people, this is something I wanted to mention as well, Ty, but I don't know if you've heard about this, but do you know how we were talking about before, the pressures to bounce back and all that type of stuff, not just physically, but mentally and socially? Having a baby, especially for the first time, can also feel like grief. And
I was just about to mention that. I'm glad
really?
You did. There's a next point I was going to mention. I thought I'll let Mariam finish this and then I'll mention it, but alhamdulillah.
Oh my God, yeah, because do you know, not even like from first child, because some parents, when they've already got one child and they've got another on the way, one of the thoughts that they can have is, how can I love another human being as much as this first human being that I've given birth to? And sometimes parents have this fear of not loving the second child as much or as well as the first child, and that's a legitimate fear, because I've been looking at like what other mums are like sharing online, and they've made videos about it, and then they realize as soon as the child comes, it's a different type. It might not be like, like your firstborn child,
the golden child.
Yes, but then it's another.
The golden child. I'm the eldest.
Really?
And the golden child is very, very special.
I'm the forgotten middle child. So it can feel like grief, but it can also, from a first-time mum perspective, which is what we're talking about specifically, it can feel very scary, like knowing that your previous life is never going to come back, because once you become a parent, that's it. Like, you're no longer ever going to be, you know, Allahu Alam, like, Allah protect all our children, but you never know if your child's going to go before you. Do you suddenly stop calling yourself a mother, or you're someone who's experienced motherhood? Do you know what I mean? Like, people who have one child and the child passes on before them. There's still a parent. They just don't hurt their child anymore. So you're forever changed, and that's one of the things that I can imagine for a lot of parents that they might anticipate fearing.
That's really interesting that you should say that, because you actually took a completely different perspective to what I did on the subject. So this is something that I've like thought about and talked about, I've spoken about with a lot of people, is about grief. But you mentioned it in the context of having another child or children, which is really interesting. It's nothing I've ever thought about. For me, and maybe it's a bit more selfish, it's grief of losing the life that you had.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's something for me that I'm so glad that I read about, and I like saw things online about it, because I would never have thought, because the feelings that you're feeling are like grief.
Yes.
And you are grieving over a different life. And that's one thing I did. I always thought, like, at first, like, I was in denial. I was like, when are things gonna get back? When are things gonna get back to the way they were? And my partner my husband keep reminding me, like, well, they're not gonna, but that's not a bad thing. It's a new thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm not one for change. I like variety, but I don't necessarily like change, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was really, really difficult. And I have I'm quite an active, proactive person. Mariam knows, Daiba knows that. I'm involved in a lot of things. I like things done a certain way. And then I like to be involved in things. And obviously when you have a child, I have a friend who said to me, we mentioned that I don't like being late, and I was late and I've missed appointments. And also, so
you mean like post
yes,
child?
After, yes, post child. And the friend was like, oh, this must be killing you, like being this like all over the place and not having that kind of consistency and routine. And I was like, yes, it's properly killing me, because there's just no predictability. Like you can't, when your child's done a number 2 or had a blow up before you leave, or just even they're just forgetting just because of the exhaustion, it's so difficult. So that for me, that loss of the
your
my previous
freedom
life was
yeah.
something that was something that I had to really, really work on, something that was really, really difficult. Even to now, like I'm trying to like grab on, like just to anything that I can from my old life. But I think it's time to accept that it's not going to be the same, and that's fine. I have to tell myself that's fine. It's a new chapter, and alhamdulillah, like you said, I'm so grateful, and there's no blessing like it, really. So I am happy, and I'm excited for a new chapter, like I said, and new adventures.
That's like one of the fears that, not fears, but one of the problems that you could say maybe that we have maybe as new mothers, as new parents, is trying to recapsulate is that the right term? Encapsulate our past lives, and trying to like hold on to them, like even with straws. Whereas for me, I was so like ready to enter that new phase that I don't actually miss. I don't regret. I don't regret anything. Is that regret the right term? I don't miss anything of my old life, essentially.
That's good.
For me personally, because it took so long to have children. But so for me, it's like, oh, that time's gone, and now it's the next phase. Yeah, as you guys can tell, I'm not with it today. It's the iftar's got to me today. I can't speak.
You're doing amazing. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. You see, that's another. I love that difference in perspective, because I'm glad that you went. I'm glad you were ready. I was not ready.
And I think it just goes to show that age doesn't really like matter, does it? And when it comes,
I'm a little bit.
Everyone's like different. Yeah.
So it's when you're ready. Deva, what do you think?
Just
before we go,
I was going to say.
Sorry, my love. Before we ask you your opinions on the topic, whether you had that experience, we're going to go to our comments, if that's okay.
And just probably, if there's any comments, or if not, that's fine. Just to remind everyone, this show is how to raise a better, happier mum, and it's sponsored by One Nation Childcare, which is a childcare facility based in Newcastle upon Tyne. And you can find more details if you're interested in enrolling your child into the nursery, One Nation Childcare, through our social media platform. So on Stream Islam, you'll see it advertised if you're interested. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mariam and Taiba, to see if Taiba's got anything that you would like to add.
Do we have any comments, producer Sister Sarah? No, we're good. Oh yeah, Taiba. So we were just saying, do you have that experience of missing that grief of an old life, or were you a bit like Mariam and ready and
pow?
It's crazy, because I feel like all three of us have had very unique experiences, because of course you mentioned, Miriam, that you weren't ready, whereas Miriam Han, you mentioned you were completely ready. For me, I thought I was ready, but when, like, you know, when you think, oh yes, I'm ready, you know, but honestly, when after I gave birth and everything, that's the thoughts that came in my head. Actually, maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I'm not good enough to be a mother. But I do think that naturally, like, I think again for the listeners as well who have had this similar experience, I don't think it's an age thing. I don't think it's a maturity thing. I think it's quite a natural thing depending on your what's happening around you. So there's a few different, sorry, I go in so much detail, but there's a few different elements that come with it. So your support network is really important. It might be, so that's where the isolation comes in. Sometimes you can be surrounded by everyone and still feel lonely. So that's a big part of it as well with PND. And then there's other elements as well that might influence how your mental health state might be. So for example, if you find that you aren't doing your old hobbies or interests, or you don't have enough time to do those things that you were doing before, some people have to leave work, some people leave it permanently, some people go on a break. I think for me it was similar to you, Miriam, where you were saying that actually, you know, the routine, the structure, that being out of touch, it was very difficult. So I think I think I can completely understand why people might feel that they're ready and then struggle, because I was one of them. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I've just had a brainwave based on what Diva said. Do you know what? Do you know what you just said? You guys were talking about like having a routine and having your things going on, your hobbies and interests.
Yeah.
I don't think I had a routine before, Mana.
No, you didn't.
I didn't.
I can say that. You didn't.
I just had that
so much
brainwave.
love. So much love. Yeah.
I think I just went with the flow in life. I was just like going from wherever and whatever. So now I've got a routine. I actually quite enjoy it. Like I'm at that point now where, like, if you need me on a certain day and Amana's got playgroup, I'm like, nope, because this is our time. This is my time with my daughter. We're sticking to our routine, because obviously children need routine more so than adults. We're flexible, but children like don't like disruptions to routine. So I'm actually quite enjoying like having our fixed days of playgroups. So we go here on this day, that day, etc.
I've noticed that. I'm so proud of you.
Me too.
I've noticed that. Allah Mabarak. You come like so far. And it's just mashallah. Yeah, you were free flowing, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of living.
Like you know, like you guys always used to call me a foodie, but really, if you guys all wanted food back in the day after like an IDC meeting, right? I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's just go for it. Last minute, it doesn't matter. No, but now I'm just like, I want to be, but I can't, and I don't mind not being spontaneous anymore. It's like I'm not grieving it, which is different to. I'm just like, I don't care. I've had that phase and had that time in my life. Now is like mine and my daughter's time. Even though yes, I need a break, but this is like.
You just cherish
revelation.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, that's beautiful. And that's really, really important. I think for me, one thing I try to do, and there's different ways of doing this, and so this might not be to everybody's like
cup of tea,
yeah, I guess that's how you can say it, or everybody's way of doing things. But what I try to do with Abdullah is I try to maintain a routine, but I try to make him quite flexible, because I still wanted to, and I still do want to have that flexibility. So I would have like certain, feed times, nap times, change times, but sometimes I'd have it on the go.
Yes.
So that he was used to it. I didn't want to be so rigid that he could only sleep in a certain environment and only drink in a certain environment. Even like down to little things like his milk. People like warm their milk up to a certain temperature. I always had it at different temperatures and cooler, so that he wouldn't be stuck to that. So that if I was in a pinch or if I was out and about, I didn't have to worry. I could pick up an instant bottle. Babe, I knows. I've done this plenty of times. Pick up an instant bottle and not have to warm it up and just feed it at room temperature. Whereas some people I know are a bit rigid, and that's fine if that works for them. Like each their own.
Like military
everybody's different. And whatever works. Like some things are suited to other people, certain people's lifestyles, and some to others. So that's
really good advice. Alhamdulillah.
But and so now, alhamdulillah, I am able to, go and go to see a friend, or
without feeling like tied down to like a sleep schedule.
Exactly. And then nap a lot, or like go and pick up some groceries, or even just go for a walk and go for some fresh air without having to worry about this is schedule. So consistency is important, but I think for me personally that flexibility works for me. And I think children are adaptable.
Yes,
me personally, this is just like you said, it's not from a professional
they're malleable.
They are they're adaptable. So it's good for me, I think, in my humble opinion, it's good to kind of raise them like that. So if you do, there's an occasion, or all sorts of things pop up where you're in a bit of a pinch. Can't think of an example, but I'm sure you guys can use your imagination.
Like a bedtime routine, like some kids.
Like if some, if somebody falls ill, or you have unexpected visitors, or you're at a wedding, or you're on a long distance trip. There you go. I thought of loads of examples. And then then the child is adaptable and they're not so rigid. Whereas I know sometimes for some mums, it can, if they're in that situation, it can improve incredibly difficult. And like I said, that's not saying it's the wrong way. That's just saying that for me, that's the right way.
You've
just want to add.
Go on, Mela.
Oh, sorry. I'm totally with you with that, because I've always been quite flexible and things. But what I want to say is, for those mums who do have a routine and have a structure, and when that routine goes out the window, if you find that you are struggling with that, and it's actually causing you sort of like so it's sort of causing your mental health to go down the drain or anything like that, it's just about, again, just practicing sort of mindfulness and acceptance that actually, this thing hasn't worked out just yet. And I think it's sometimes about us being flexible as mums in our mind, that actually, because what happens is, most of the time when we've got that routine and structure for kids, sometimes our brain, because we've built that routine and structure, we've done so much to do that. Again, I'm saying we, but I'm talking for mothers who do have that routine and structure. It can be really difficult when that falls through. It's just about sort of practicing that acceptance. If you find that routine and structure is what helps you in the long run, and that's what you need, again, everybody's has their own sort of like what works for them, but acceptance can be a big thing. And it's easy for me to say, oh, just accept, but it's not as simple as that. But there's a lot of elements to it. But again, positive affirmations, thinking through, actually, this is what the situation's like at the moment, and what can I do that might change it a bit differently next time? Does that make sense?
That's actually a fantastic point.
Yeah, it is. Do you know how, Taiba, you mentioned acceptance? This really does feel like the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
Denial, anger, acceptance, bargaining, not in that order, depression. We've covered it all. We've covered all 5.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And that's the thing, that when I discovered that, I was like, I don't know why, but my mind was blown. I was like, wow, it's I don't know why. I think it's such a good way of explaining it.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because the 5 stages of grief, like you said, it literally goes through them, and having that structure, almost following it, not following it on purpose, but then knowing that, like, you're just going through this stage of grief.
It's not like Taiba said, it's not going to last forever.
Exactly.
And accepting that, there's having a plan B is helpful, but if not, so long as you're healthy, your child's healthy, they're fed, they're clothed, like especially in the baby phase, they're fed, they're clothed, they're warm, the nappy's done, inshallah, everything's going to be okay. Like, that's one of the things that really helped me in the end, was that so long as they haven't got a rash that I don't know anything about, anything weird like that, and that's going to make me go to the hospital, then alhamdulillah, everything's okay.
That's actually a fantastic point, because you reminded me of something a dear Parisian friend said. And she said to me when I was pregnant, she was like, and we were just fussing about what to buy and what things to get, and she was like, look, as long as they've got shelter, they're warm, they're clean, and they're fed.
Yes.
You don't need all the bells and whistles, all these things you see online, all these things that you think the kids, that's all you need. Have you got that sorted? Yes, you've got that sorted. You don't need anything else. And that thing seems like such a simple statement and such like an obvious statement, but to this day, 10, 11, 12 months later, it still sticks in my mind. And it's something that I say to other mums now, like when they're fussing, I'm like, look, you got a home, you got warmth, you got your milk, inshallah, nappies. And I know that's easy to say, and some people, subhanAllah, that don't even have that. But generally speaking, I'm saying, if you have that, then alhamdulillah, you don't need an extra. If you want them, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm trying to say is, don't stress about them. People like you mentioned, and we've mentioned before, about online, and packing list, what to pack in your hospital bag, what do you have in your nursery, the top 10 things to buy for when you're having, and it's just so much pressure,
and financial pressure as well.
Exactly, to consume, and and purchase all these things when in fact you don't need them. You only need, like I said, the basics. The child is going to be happy. You're going to be happy. If you want them stuff and it's going to make you happy and you have the means, that's perfectly fine. Bismillah, go for it. But don't stress over it. So that was one point. But also another point I was going to make, Taiba, you were saying something. I can't remember. One of you said something. Not Taiba, you were saying about acceptance. It goes back to what you were saying, Mariam, about mum guilt. You know, Taiba, you were saying, you know, like accept it. And like, obviously it's not as easy. We're just saying it like flippantly. As you said, it's easier said than done, but not mum guilting yourself. I think that comes under what you were saying.
Yeah.
So not feeling too bad. I think I fell under this a little bit this weekend, and some kind sisters reminded me that you said that a few times, and I'm like, oh, I'm not doing very well, or oh, I'm not doing this very well, and they did kind of remind me that no, actually you're doing really well.
Yes.
And you should stop saying that. And sometimes you don't even know that voice. That you know, the language you're using is so powerful and it makes such a difference. So being aware of that. And usually I think I like to think that I'm quite self-aware, but I didn't even cotton on until they mentioned it. And then I was like, oh yeah, I have been saying that quite a bit. So, you know, we talk about mum shaming, but not shaming ourselves and not having that guilt ourselves, I think is really, really important. And like we said, you know, all of this is easier said than done. We're saying it so generally because we have 1 hour and we're trying to breeze over things. We understand that, you know, it is very, very difficult, and Allah make it easy for everybody who's going through poor mental health, not just postnatal, but just anything, any kind of bad mental health.
Ameen. You always make beautiful du'as. I always notice that. Alhamdulillah. You always do. Allah reward you for that. Ameen. Do you know something that you mentioned as well, Mariam, just now and what you were talking about? Do you know that voice that you can have, and the voice in your head where like you're beating yourself up over not doing things right, and it can have a detrimental effect on you? And as Taib was talking about, like your mental health, but also if you have a positive voice, it also seeps out into you, like on a physiological level, because then your baby knows when you're relaxed. And I think a lot of mums who are reading about motherhood as they approach motherhood will know that, like the way you are, it seeps into your hormones, into your bloodstream, into your bonding one-to-one, tummy time, all that stuff, right? Where you've got the baby close to your chest. They know and they can sense it, even if they don't know what they're sensing. They just know that if the mum's relaxed, that they can feel safe. They can let their guard down, and babies sleep better as well when the mum is relaxed. And the reason for that is because when babies wake up during the night, a lot of the time it can be because it's danger. Do you know, like when if you put a baby down, I can't remember if you're supposed to put the head down first, or the belly, the bum, or the bum.
I know this because I
so
do
it just stops them feeling like
all the
falling.
time. Yeah.
Taiba, do you remember?
First, I think it's bum, feet to head.
Yes. Taiba, do you know when you put a baby down, it's meant to be the bum first and then the head?
I have completely forgotten, to be honest.
That's fine. Okay.
Taiba, you've got excuse.
Almost 3 years now.
Yeah,
that little baby.
Recently, actually, just a few months.
Yes.
I stopped doing that.
Like for example,
I think it's bottom first, so they don't feel like they're gonna.
Yes, that's it. It's like a falling reflex. So, a lot of the times when I was reading about motherhood, as I was approaching motherhood, a lot of times babies wake up because they don't feel safe. Obviously they wake up because they need feed, and they need to feed like regularly, because obviously their stomachs are small, so they're digesting very quickly. But they wake up a lot of time because they don't feel safe, which is why co-sleeping is such a beautiful, if you can do it safely, is an amazing thing to get into, because it's not natural to actually keep the baby away from you as a mum. They need to know that mum is there, which is why my daughter slept so much better quickly than putting her in the crib. So did I as well, because I was relaxed, she was relaxed. She knew I was there in the periphery of her mind when she was asleep as a baby. So that's so, like, subhanAllah, amazing.
That is incredible.
What you were saying before, what I wanted to mention is, because I wanted to know, like when Taib was talking about acceptance, how do you go through that process of accepting? Because like we said, it's easy to say it, but how do you do it? And the only thing I can think of really is training ourselves to rewire our brain after becoming mums. And to do that, we have to basically, the way that helped me is parent myself the way I wished I was parented. And not dissing my like parents or anything like that, not dissing my mum and dad, because they did, I think they did the best they could.
They did a brilliant job. I love my Barak. They did an amazing job.
But I think I want to, treat myself the way I wish I was treated as a child, like, you know, and also let that rub off onto my daughter. So extending a better level of sabr, having more patience, being more gentle. And I think I am touching into a little bit about gentle parenting now, but that's something that really helps me keep myself in check.
There is I don't like to recommend things that I haven't read, but there's a that's why I was keeping all my recommendations till the last show, because I'm going to bring them and recommend them, and then we can some of them I haven't read. But one of the things you touched upon about, you know, parenting in a different way, there's a book called Things I Knew.
Yes, I know. I've got it. I've got
the
I need to quickly read it tonight.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe
I should have brought it with me.
I've got the audiobook.
I
got it from the library. Actually, it's probably gone. It's probably up. But that when I only listened to the first few chapters, I found that was really helpful in what you were saying. You know, so it's called. I'll get the information next week. But Things I Wish My Parents Knew. Something along those lines. It's a really popular book. Really, really. It was best-selling actually. But like I said, I'll get the information next week. But such a fantastic book because it really does exactly what you're saying. Tries to teach parents
how to parent, because there's no manual, is there? There's no manual.
So that was one point I wanted to touch upon. Second point, when you're talking about the inner voice and how it affects a child, completely true, because my mum, alhamdulillah, Allahumma barak, Allah give her all our mums a long life.
Ameen.
And give them goodness, Ameen. Good health and iman. I mean, because I'm the golden child as well, remember. So she is a literal cheerleader. So my inner voice is her voice, not necessarily her own internal voice for herself, but how she spoke to me. And it was literally like literally she made me believe I could like fly.
Like she built you up.
Built me up, and I really tried to do, and that's not naturally me. And sometimes I'm a bit critical, but that's something I tried to implement with Abdullah, is like having that positive language and voice. Haven't seen the fruits of it yet because he's tiny, but inshallah. He seems happy enough. So yes. And then the other point I was going to touch upon, because Allahumma barak, he covered a few points there with the sleeping thing. Oh my goodness, I know every week I go on about sleep, but it's so true. So we co-sleep as well, but it wasn't out of my choice, even though I do understand, and my husband did explain to me as well that, you know, it is the natural way and all that kind of thing. We had him in a side sleeper first, and then my husband, he just kind of like, Abdullah managed to like wiggle his way into the bed. What was my point? Oh yes, but I find it so difficult to put Abdullah to sleep. So Abdullah's dad can put him to sleep. If aunties or uncles are visiting, they can put him to sleep really well, and I cannot for the life of me put him to sleep until recently. And it's because I knew this. I knew that I was, because, you know, of the stress, and I'm always stressed when I put him to sleep because, you know how, have you heard of the Sunday scaries?
No.
Sunday scaries.
Oh, wait, you're scared of Monday approaching?
Yeah, you said Monday.
Oh, okay.
So when I was like researching motherhood and parenting, I heard of something called sleep time scaries.
Yeah, you get anxiety.
I get such anxiety when it comes to bedtime. My husband works late, so I'm usually by myself, and it's just, even though I have just the one, I just get so much anxiety. And Abdullah senses that, so he will not sleep. And then I get progressively more worked up. But recently I found a technique of relaxing myself, doing an activity that I really enjoy with Abdullah, just basically having a prance around the bedroom. And because I'm happy and it's releasing that, you know, it's the serotonin, he has been falling asleep. So alhamdulillah, it makes me so emotional, because you guys who have been listening know how I am about my sleep.
Yeah,
it's only been a few times, but I managed to, like, because before he would go to sleep just by feeding, and that was fine. That stopped months ago. Then the last month I've been wheeling him around the house in the pushchair. That kind of worked the motion, but he's cottoned on now. We call it the sleepmobile. He does not like the sleepmobile. He knows, he associates that with sleep now. So now he doesn't go in there. So I was a bit snookered in that sense.
So what made you realise that, like, being relaxed and chilling out was the key? One day
I just accepted that he wasn't going to sleep. And I'd been told this before, and I kind of knew it, but I didn't want to face it. Like, people said to me, like, if he's not going to sleep, he's not going to sleep. Don't force it. Let him play. But in my head, I'm like, no, because I've got
then you're
things
tired.
to do, and I want to sleep. So I kind of forced it. And then one day I just accepted it, and I thought, come on, like, we'll have some fun. Let's have some fun instead. And because we were having fun, he fell asleep. So I was like, subhanallah. So from then, it doesn't always, you know, work out like that, but majority of the time,
alhamdulillah.
So yeah.
That's
So
actually like really interesting to know, because when I stopped breastfeeding, I was like, what am I going to do to get her to sleep?
Yeah.
Because my go-to was to breastfeed to sleep,
of
and
course.
for 2 years, and I'm like, oh my days, what do I do? And I used to have to get mom and dad to put her to sleep, and or now what I do is like, I feel bad, but like, let's go for a nighttime drive.
Oh yes, well,
Like
this-
emotion.
well that's it. So
Isn't it?
I don't drive,
Yeah.
but when we were having this problem of Abdullah, like when he stopped
Yeah.
going to sleep with his feeds, he would be up for hours and hours. And when my
Yes.
husband would come home, we put him in the car, but I don't drive. So I don't feel bad. If I
Yeah.
had that resource, I would definitely
Yeah,
be
the
doing
pram, the
that.
car, it's all the
So
same.
pram,
That's
but
fine,
yeah, but a car is better because the amount,
Yeah.
well, I guess the amount of steps I've
Yeah.
raked in is good. But yeah.
But I'm glad that you've shared that bit about like how to get Abdullah to sleep is just by chilling out and relaxing. Because I feel like I still get anxiety sometimes if I have to put him on to sleep, and we're at home and like a rainy day and we haven't gone out. Because when we go out and about, she does expel more energy, but at home obviously it's a bit harder because
Yeah,
you just
it
get
is so hard
kids
just
might
being
just get
within-
bored being in the same four walls.
That's it.
So you've made me like feel a bit more relaxed that I can do it. Like I know I could do it if I had to.
Somebody else, Faber, was this you? Was this you who said this to me recently about going to a different room?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah, it was you. I knew it for you.
So,
Go on,
sorry,
go for
I
it.
was just saying I was struggling with my little one to get her to sleep. She woke up in the middle of the night, and because we were in the same environment, I just went for a walk downstairs and then took her back up. But I did the whole bedtime routine again, like go to the toilet, brush your teeth, la la la. And then when I took her back into the bedroom, she went to sleep. So that really does help. So changing the environment can help.
That's good to know.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, when you said that, I was like, that's true. And the bedroom next door to us is a lot bigger. So sometimes he likes to go in there and just like have a good old run around because he's crawling now. So all he wants to do is just zoom around.
Oh,
But
I need to
so I
see
think
him crawling.
That's another good tip.
Come down.
Inshallah, you'll see him. But we're approaching the end of the show, and one thing I really, really wanted to touch upon was, and Deva, you can help us a little bit with this, is we've shared advice, and inshallah we'll try and squeeze in some other points if we can. But I think a really important one that is not talked about enough, especially as I said with the taboos within our community, is actually getting professional help. So would you like to say a little bit about that, Mother?
Yes, I was literally going to like add that on the end, so I'm glad you've mentioned it.
No, don't worry.
I was literally going to say that with professional help, people think it's very taboo, and people think that actually I'll be labelled something, and it'll go on my records and all these things. What you need to understand is that help can really support you when you are struggling. So I'm okay and open to say this, but both times I've had help. The first time was because I had like really bad postnatal depression, and I got support through doing sort of CBT. But the second time I used it as a preventative measure. So it wasn't that I was actually experiencing the postnatal depression. It was more the anxieties, like a bit of worry that what if it comes back. So I got counselling, and honestly, I can honestly say that probably really helped me not having those like huge symptoms that I was having. And they did, again, they touched on positive affirmations, all the things that I knew. But when a professional saying that to you, especially if, again, for the viewers who are like really good at giving other people advice and supporting all the other mothers, and I know who these are, just make sure that you get your help as well, because even though you know all those things, it's really hard to apply it to yourself. So having a professional just telling you those things can really help, and also just talking it out sometimes can really help as well. So definitely get professional help if needed. There's no shame in it, and it can really support, especially with the emotional regulation that we were just talking about before as well.
Beautiful. That's Alama back so beautifully put. Right, we're pushing the end of the show. Mariam, do you want to say anything else? Any advice? Maybe we'll end on this. Any advice you'd like to give anybody that is probably going through this? Focus on after a baby, but even general poor mental health. So anything that you'd like to say? Any bit of advice that you could give, inshallah?
For me, it would be if you're someone who's similar to me and doesn't like quite expressing their emotions to other people, but having a baby changes everything. So not being afraid to reach out to your mum friends in particular and ask them for advice, and just being open to being vulnerable with your emotions can really be really helpful. So what I mean by that is just opening up to any degree that you want, whatever like small level that you can, because people and your friends around you, especially other mums, have such a wealth of knowledge and advice and guidance that it can make the difference to you know, getting out of your slump and picking yourself up, or being stuck where you are. So for me, that was very hard for me to just open up to like different friends, those who've already experienced motherhood before me, and asking for advice. But once I did, I felt so much better. Being able to take that advice forward and be like, oh, okay, now I can do this, I can do that. And they told me where to go. I know where to go now, in the future. And if I'd kept myself to myself and kept myself closed, I might not have gotten through it the way I did. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
I think for me, and then Dave, I'll go on to you. I think for me, I think I've touched on it already. I think it's a community, like it kind of similar lines to what you're saying, Mariam, but on a more group level. Like, go and find these groups. Like, we are so blessed that we have them free. You have them free, like, subhanallah, most of the time on our doorsteps. If you just look, there are so many out there that are just there.
So
no
utilize
cost,
it before the government takes it away.
Exactly. It's such a blessing. So I would say, yeah, go to these, you know, if you're struggling with breastfeeding, there are breastfeeding groups. If you're struggling, you know, I know the family hub that I go to, they had a breastfeeding group that I went to, like a mum's breastfeeding group, which was amazing. And then there was also it's called Let's Talk. And I really wanted to go to that, but I never got around to it. And then it clashed with something else for Abdullah's. And it was just like, I think there was therapists or something. Taiba, you might know that what the hub does, but it was a Let's Talk, and it would basically have people for you on a professional level to talk to. So yeah, for me is to seek out those, you know, centers and hubs and see what is going on around your area, and get involved with that. But yeah, before we go, Taiba, any last words, any bit of advice you'd give, and then any final last words, inshallah?
I think with all the topics that we've touched on, like connection, getting the support, different professional help, you know, positive affirmations, all these things, I think they all go hand in hand. So ensuring what works for you, and you'll find not only one thing might work, it might be that you need a few different things. So just find what works for you and go with it. But yeah, that's all I want to say. But thank you for listening anyways.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the show. I know it was very, very last minute, but my heart is so full. I'm so happy to have you both here. So we'll finish off now. So Jazakallah for listening. Next week, we'll be talking about how to maintain relationships after having a newborn. So if you guys have listening, have anything to say on that, any comments, this will be with your spouse, with other children, with parents, with in-laws, with friends, community. It's something that we're going to touch upon next week. So yes, Jazakallah khair to my guests, Taiba and Mariam, for being on the show, and Jazakallah khair for everybody listening. Hope you have a lovely iftar, and inshallah we'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.